He got to the point in saying that he would be for a consumption tax. And then I think the top 10 or top 16 or 6% of the income earners would also pay a small income tax. Now, I got to tell you, this guy actually helped run the IRS for a time. That turned me off right there, because I don't care if he was in the Reagan administration. Here's a guy that we're talking about keeping the IRS around when most Americans want to get rid of the IRS, or at least drastically curtail the IRS's power. And you don't do that by having a drastic, across the board consumption tax. I'm not buying it. Not to mention that if you keep the IRS around, that means you're not repealing the income tax law. You're not repealing the income tax amendment. So just as what happened back when the income tax was first started, you're going to have the wonderful, wealthy that are going to get slammed. And then they're going to see that their rate starts to go back up. And then we're going to see it creep down to the middle class, to the lower class, just like it is today. And so we'll be stuck with an income tax in about 20 years, an income tax and a consumption tax, or sales tax, if you will, on everything. Now, I'm not buying it. So I got to tell you, I wasn't very happy with his position on that, on how to finance and fund the government. But, this is the kind of stuff that we need to hear from all of these candidates before we start making a decision about who we're really going to back and who we're going to, we might start giving our money to. Now, I haven't donated a dime to anyone yet, simply because I don't know who I'm going to back. When I tell people this, they're like, "Yeah, right, you got a favorite." No, I'm serious, and I'm honest and serious about it. I do not endorse anybody at this point because I have not decided. Now, sure, I may talk about Donald Trump, and we'll be talking more about the Donald in a bit. I may talk about Donald Trump, and then I may talk about other candidates as well in a positive note. But it doesn't mean that I am endorsing them or supporting them in any manner. In fact, I made it quite clear in my speech yesterday at the event, at the picnic, that right now there is really only one candidate that I definitely do not want to see get the nomination. But make no mistake about it, if he did get the nod, I would support him over a Hillary Clinton or a Joe Biden or anybody else on the Democratic side any day of the week. And that person, of course, is Jeb Bush. No, I don't want to see Jeb Bush get the nod. I'm not interested in making history and living through. Do you realize that if Jeb Bush was to become president, it would be the first time in history that brothers were presidents, served as presidents. Now, we've had fathers and sons, and this is modern history too. There's going way back, John Quincy Adams and John Adams, father, son, John Adams and John Quincy Adams, father, son. But they were separated by a few presidents, but they were pretty close. And then you get Bush and Bush separated by, there were other related, there have been other presidents who've had a relative who was also president. But then we get to the Bushes, separated by one non-relative president. So we had George Herbert Walker Bush, although he only served one term. But then we had 2 terms of William Jefferson Clinton. And then George Herbert Walker's oldest son became president, George W. Bush. And now we've had one president since George W. Bush. He's had 2 terms. And now comes his brother, Jeb Bush. Well, it would make history on a couple of different levels. One, brothers. I think it's the first time that brothers have actually been elected to the high office. 2, it's the first time any living president has had 2 relatives be in office while he's still alive. And I expect George H.W. Bush to be alive in 2016. Also, it's the first time that a sitting president has had two sons become president. So there's a lot of there would be a lot of firsts, a lot of historical first, if you will, if Jeb Bush were to win the 2016 contest. And I'm not against Jeb Bush because I don't want to see that. And I'm not going to be for Jeb Bush because I want to be a part of some sort of history. After all, we were part of some sort of history making when we elected Obama, right? Well, I didn't vote for him, but when we as a nation elected Obama, we're part of history. This is an historic moment. Yeah, historically devastating. But, if you want to know more about Mark Everson, just go over to rodeccles.net and, there'll be information over there. You can go over to link over to his website. You might find that, that he's somebody for you that you can support after reading through all his stuff. I can't say I would support him among the field of 18. But we will. But if he were to get the nod, yes, I would support him. But other than that, at this particular juncture, I don't see him as being my candidate. But he might be your candidate, and that's fine. We all have different likes, with the different strokes for different folks. I'm not talking about the old TV program. What you talking about, Willis? Wasn't that Different Strokes? Yeah, I think that was different. Yeah. Gary, that was Gary Coleman, right? Did he pass away? Sometimes I don't remember what these people, these old. I know there are a lot of young, old stars. Well, they were child stars. A lot of them didn't get too far into adulthood before they passed away for a number of different reasons. But what was the other? There was another diminutive star back in that time, Emmanuel, right? That was whatever happened to him. He used to be Michael Jackson's sidekick. He looked like a puppet, actually, sitting next to Michael. I don't know what happened because he's such a tiny kid. I don't, he's like Gary Coleman. I guess there was some medical issues with him. He never really grew. Whatever happened to him? I don't know. I haven't heard nor seen him from Webster. That was his TV show. I'm sure everybody remembers Webster. But how did we get off on that? Different strokes for different folks. That's how we got onto that. Sometimes I'm easily distracted, but there's so much going on, folks, that you might want to distract yourself. You really might. And one of the things that I notice that's starting to get some notice and being talked about is the embassies being opened by Cuba and the United States in our respective nations. And we have a bunch of people, at least in the United States, who don't particularly like that notion. And, today they went through a special ceremony raising the Cuban flag at the Cuban embassy here in the United States of America over in D.C. I don't understand the rush, the need and the rush to all of a sudden bring Cuba back into the fold of the world, as it were. We were the only nation left, really, the only significant nation left, really, that had any type of economic or political embargoes on Cuba. So it's not as, but with that said, notice that Cuba kept falling further and further behind into economic despair. Now, look, just because, we're normalizing relations with Cuba, it doesn't mean that it's going to drag them out of the 19th century, economically speaking. There's not much for the United States to invest in, not that we really want to because of the type of regime that is there. Can you imagine companies wanting to spend all kinds of money in Cuba, investing in Cuba, only to have the Cuban government take it over, kind of like Venezuela. Remember that when, you had all the American oil and other international oil firms investing a ton of money down there, building oil refineries and drilling rigs and that type of thing, and that infrastructure around drilling oil in Venezuela. And then all of a sudden to have Hugo Chavez just nationalize it and take it from them. Well, companies are not in business to have their assets stolen by another government because they can't make money and stay in business that way. And if they can't make money and stay in business, then that means they can't keep a bunch of people employed. And I'm not just talking about, senior management. The guys that are earning 437 times more than the person on the oil rig, which is a bunch of bunk, by the way. That sort of thing, leftists always try to put that out there, but that's been debunked in numerous times. It's not true. It's a misnomer. It doesn't take into a lot of things into consideration. Hey, remember the wealthiest person on the planet right now, as counted by and ranked by Forbes 400, is what's his name? Carlos something from Mexico. He's a Mexican from Mexico that lives in Mexico City. He's reportedly the wealthiest. Now you got to are you telling me that there isn't any opportunity in Mexico? Well, there's got to be some for this guy in order to make it to the top. There's got to be some opportunity down there. But there isn't any opportunity right now in Cuba. And, maybe they'll end up getting some. But at this particular juncture, you have to, not that I'm against nationalizing or opening up relations with Cuba. Let's face it, it'd be kind of nice to have be able to get a real Cuban cigar right here in the United States legally. And people are saying, is that all you care about is a damn cigar, Ron? You just want to be able to smoke a cigar? Well, hey, that's a cash crop for Cubans. If I could buy a Cuban cigar, I'd be helping their economy. I'd be helping a Cuban earn money to feed him and his family, to put a roof over their head, maybe to buy a car that it wasn't made in the 1950s. Just saying, I'm just trying to help. There's nothing wrong with, I get something out of it. They get something. The Cubans get something out of it. It's a win-win. What's wrong with that? It's a win-win situation. But other than that, there's nothing. There's sugarcane, I guess. There's the rum trade, but we got enough rum runners, legal rum runners, right here in the United States. Do we need to add Cuban rum? We got a bunch of Cubans here making rum, but the Bacardi family, I believe, is also Cuban. There was wasn't there a TV show with Jimmy Smits, I think, was it, about sugar and sugar cane and making rum and that kind? I don't know. There's I bring up pop culture because it has a lot to do with reality, actually. So you have that. Our reality oftentimes is reflected in our pop culture, which really doesn't bode well for us, because that means pop culture, Kim Kardashian is more important than the 16 or 18 candidates that are running for president. More important than people knowing who their governor is, who the vice president of the United States is. I'm surprised that so many people do not know it's Joe Biden, don't know his name. That's kind of scary. Yet they're going to go into a voting booth in November of 2016 and try to vote for a president. Somebody that they probably never even heard of. Just somebody told them, hey, you need to vote for this guy because, he's really good. He's really nice. He might even be cute, or might be her, because she's a woman. That's a terrible way to go. That's America for you.